Hello there. My name is John Cornelius Bradley, and I am interested in purchasing your home. If you are prepared to sell for any reason, then contact me right away. Don't miss out on these incredible deals. Just pick up the phone at 1:47 a.m. and call now. That's what it said. I'd seen letters like this in my mailbox before, although I don't recall the others being quite as weird. Usually, whoever was handing them out had at least put in the effort to type them and make them look somewhat professional. This one was just messy chicken scratch on a piece of paper. They hadn't even included a phone number, unless 1:47 a.m. was supposed to be it. Maybe it was some sort of mistake? If so, that just made whoever had slipped that stupid message into my mailbox seem all the more shady. I'll be honest, I don't actually know what these people want. I assume that they're house flippers, a bunch of DIY Mike Holmes wannabes looking for a dump that needs some quick TLC so they can make a quick buck. That whole business model always kind of seemed like a scam to me, but whatever, not really my problem. I fully intended to toss that stupid letter into the trash with the rest of the junk mail and never think about it again. So that's exactly what I did. My wife Katrina and I had been living at my previous residence for about 4 years when we started getting those chicken scratch letters. Neither of us really paid much attention to them. It was just junk mail, no different than the fast food coupons and other bullshit that get crammed into your mailbox every day. They went into the garbage with most of the other junk mail. Even when the letters became more persistent, I didn't really feel anything more than a slight tinge of frustration. Each letter was clearly handwritten. They were never the same. Even the wording changed slightly on occasion, although never by much. We'd go from getting them once a month to once a week, and after a little while, they'd be in our mailbox every single day. By that point, I figured it was probably just a prank. It wasn't funny, but sooner or later, whoever was doing it would hopefully get bored, and if they didn't, well, we'd figure that out later. I won't pretend that the persistence of whoever this particular asshole was didn't bother me just a little, because it did. But with no return address or functional phone number, I really didn't have any courses of action. The neighbors weren't getting the same endless barrage of letters we asked, and they didn't seem to know what to do either, outside of contacting the police. Katrina suggested we try, but I already knew they wouldn't do a damn thing for us. The police in my town aren't exactly the most helpful. They'd say they'd look into it, and after either not trying or not finding anything, they'd immediately give up. I figured there was no point in wasting our time or effort. Now I wonder if it would have made a difference. Katrina has been gone for about 4 months now. I don't know what happened to her. Chances are, I never will know. Truth be told, I'm not sure I even want to know. She left for work one day and never came home. The last time I ever saw her, I was half asleep in bed as she got ready. She came in to say goodbye just before she left. She leaned down, kissed me, and said goodbye. She told me she loved me. I told her that I loved her too. And then she was gone. I always thought the last time I ever saw my wife would be different than that. I always thought, never mind. By 6, when she hadn't gotten home, I tried calling her cell. No response. By 7, I called her work. They were closed. By 8, I'd started calling friends and family. The paranoia had set in by that point, the fear that you tell yourself is unreasonable. She'll be home in a little bit. She'll be home any minute now. There's a logical explanation for this. But for every excuse you make, you can't get rid of the gnawing dread in the back of your mind. A million horrible scenarios pass through your imagination. What if she was in a car accident? What if she's leaving me? What if someone attacked her? What if she was murdered? What if she's cheating on me? What if? There are few thoughts more maddening than what if. By 10, I'd call the police. I couldn't take it anymore. Nobody had heard from her. I'd even called a friend of hers from the office to confirm that she'd shown up and left as per usual. With no answers and paranoia eating away at my every thought, I caved. It felt wrong to call the police somehow, like I was overreacting, but I told myself that one way or another, I'd get answers. I didn't think I'd be so wrong. Katrina was gone. The police looked, but they never found her. They confirmed what I already knew, that she'd gone into work. She'd made it safely to the office and left at her usual time. They saw her on a red light camera, waiting at a stoplight while someone else ran through it. It was on her usual route home. No sign of her or her car after that. No hints that she diverged from her usual route. No car accidents, nothing out of the ordinary. As far as they could determine, my wife had simply vanished in a puff of smoke. I suppose it shouldn't be surprising that they eventually turned on me. They never said it outright, but suddenly they were searching my house. They interviewed me as if they'd already decided I'd murdered her, and when they found no evidence that she'd even made it home that night, they essentially just shrugged their shoulders and stepped back. The case was still open. But there were no leads, nowhere to look. And every day, every damn day, waiting in my mailbox was one of those stupid letters. Hi there, my name is John Cornelius Bradley, and I am interested in purchasing your home. If you are prepared to sell for absolutely any reason, then contact me right away. Don't miss out on these incredible deals. Just pick up your phone at 1:47 a.m., and call now. It would always read. I took some time off work. Everything that had happened was just weighing on me too much. The quiet dread in the back of my mind that Katrina was dead never went away. My fear slowly decayed into grief, and I started looking for ways to cope. I've never been much of a drinker. I don't mind the odd social drink, but I've never gone hard with it. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and I've seen what it's done to some close friends of mine. I used to hate it. But one night, some friends insisted I go out with them to have a beer, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. One beer turned into several, and for the first time in a little while, I felt all right. So, I kept going out. Usually, I'd go out with friends, but when they either didn't want to or were busy, I'd go by myself. I started keeping more alcohol in the house, and after work, I'd have a few beers just to make it easier to be alone in that house. All the while, the letters had gotten more aggressive. Sometimes more than one would be in my mailbox, and sometimes I'd even find one at my front door, although I never saw anyone drop them off. The persistence was what pissed me off the most. If this was some stupid prank, then why not just give it up already? There was no point to it. Its only purpose seemed to be pissing me off, and considering what else I was dealing with at the time, my patience really started wearing thin. The boiling point came after one night when I'd gone out with some friends. I'd had more to drink than usual, and by the time the cab dropped me off at home, I was still very deep in the bag. I remember shuffling up my walkway and fumbling around in my pocket for my keys, when I noticed another one of those handwritten notes on my damn porch. I picked it up and read the same stupid message I'd read a million times by now, and as I read it, I could feel a flare of anger rising in my chest. I was sick of this shit. I was sick of this harassment. I was sick of everything. I told myself I was going to install a camera on the door the next day, but as I shambled inside and crashed down onto the sofa, taking action tomorrow didn't seem good enough. I was angry now. I wanted to do something about this now. I looked at the clock, 1:42 a.m. What time did that stupid note give? 1:47? It didn't give a phone number. You'd have thought he'd have corrected that by now, but I was drunk and angry enough not to give a shit. 1:47 a.m. All right. I was going to pick up the phone and call. Who was I going to pick up the phone and call? Who the hell knows? Who the hell cares? The minutes ticked by. I sat in my chair, seething. I picked up my cell phone and paused as I looked for a number to dial. There was no number. Screw it. I just hit the green call button. I wasn't thinking clearly. There was no logic in my actions. The note said to call at 1:47, so I called. When the clock struck 1:47, I called. It should have just redialed the last number I'd called. When the phone rang, it should have been the cab company who picked it up. Instead, whoever answered the phone didn't speak. All I heard was the crackle of static on the other end. Hello, am I speaking with John Bradley? I slurred. Call at 1:47 a.m. I'm calling. Here I am. I'm calling. You happy now? You still want to buy my house, asshole? You want to buy my house? All right, I'll tell you what, you can have it. Go screw yourself. There's my price. Go screw yourself right now, you sack of garbage. I got a limited time offer right here of shut the hell up and die. Okay? I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I started crying during my little outburst. Everything I was bottling up just bubbled to the surface and exploded in one rage-filled scream into the void. It didn't dawn on me until a moment later that I'd probably just unleashed a nasty tirade against some overworked, underpaid cab company operator. When I finally realized that, I found myself tensing up, waiting for reality to ensue. I checked the phone number. It wasn't the cab company's number, but that didn't set me at ease. The number didn't look like any that I recognized. It was just a random assortment of numbers. I don't remember exactly what they were. And then the silence was broken when a voice on the other end of the line spoke. Accepted. The voice was distorted, but it sounded as if several people were speaking at once, not quite in unison, but together. The fact that there was even a response made me jump, but before I could say anything, the line went dead. Whoever I'd just called had hung up. Then came the silence, heavy, like a blanket. No wind or traffic outside. No sounds inside the house. Just silence. Total silence. And then the sound of my front door unlocking. I got up, swaying unsteadily on my feet as I stumbled out into the hall. There was nothing but darkness through the window of my front door, but I could sense that something was there on the other side. The doorknob turned and slowly swung open. My heart seemed to stop beating. In the darkness, I could not clearly see what was waiting for me on the other side. I only knew that it looked something like a man, and that it was grinning. I took a step backward as whatever it was that now waited outside my home made its way inside. I never saw it take a step. Its limbs didn't seem to move. It simply got closer. I kept moving backward, collapsing on my ass as I stumbled away. The thing that came in through the door didn't make a sound, nor did it pick up the pace. It just kept smiling as it inched closer and closer. I tried to pick myself up and failed. I was drunk. My limbs weren't responding. I was dizzy. I simply just threw myself a few feet away into the kitchen as I scrambled on all fours towards the back of the house. Every time I looked back, the figure was closer. Its arms hung limply at its sides. Its legs didn't move. It just got closer. I dragged myself through the kitchen, grabbing the counter for support as I picked myself up. I clung to it as I rushed further back towards the back door. Tears were streaming down my face. I could see the entity reflected in the glass window of the back door. looming ever closer to me as I ran, hoping that there was a snowball's chance in hell I could even escape this thing. As I left the kitchen, I broke into a sprint towards the back door and tried to pull it open. It was locked. Of course it was locked. With a trembling hand, I fumbled with the lock before pulling at the door again. It swung open and cool air washed over me as I stumbled outside onto the back porch. I tried to run and ended up collapsing off the stairs of the deck into the cold, wet grass of my backyard. Looking up, I could see the man-shaped thing in my back door. I could see its smile stretching across its face in a manner that should not have been possible. It moved for the first time as it lifted one arm and closed the back door. And then, nothing. Everything else from that night is a blur. I woke up a neighbor, crying and wet from the dew on the grass. I told them that someone had broken into my house. They called the police, and when they arrived, I watched from my neighbor's porch as they went inside. Another officer took my statement. Not long after, an ambulance arrived, followed by a coroner. They'd found Katrina. They'd found what was left of Katrina. We held a funeral not too long afterward. I never saw the state of the body. The police said that it was better to remember her as she was. They determined that someone had broken into the house, but they never figured out who or what was responsible. I didn't ask that many questions. I already knew that there were no answers to be found. Needless to say, I put the house up for sale shortly afterward. I slept in a motel, never setting foot in that house after dark, and only doing so to pack my things so I could leave as soon as possible. I don't know who bought it, but I know that it didn't stay on the market that long. The one and only silver lining to any of this, if you could call it that, is that I haven't gotten any notes from John Cornelius Bradley since the night I called. Well, save for one. It showed up about a week after I moved into the apartment where I'm living now, in my mailbox with no return address. It was signed by J.C. Bradley, and all it said was, "Pleasure doing business with you."